Very safe,
No way.
Mr. Minister.
No way to negotiate with them, we have to fulfill everything that they are demanding. Well, it is a real great honor and pleasure to welcome you, Secretary of Defense, not only as the Secretary of our greatest ally, but also as a former general, and not only a general, a real soldier and a leader to lead soldiers, it means to lead what you called a teamwork. And every one of our former generals are respecting you so much, saying that you was one of the greatest leaders and generals of the army, and they are appreciating very much. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Americans and our allies about helping us and supporting us with the MOU, signing the MOU, helping us very much. And I would like really to emphasize that carrying the burden of security that falls on our shoulders, and you know what are those burdens. And after the MOU, I know that every one of us remember the need of the QME, which is something that in Hebrew sounds very good, because in Hebrew we have the word QME. And I know that everyone is paying a lot of attention to this need. Mm-hmm. We are very committed to the need to build, the need of building trust with the Palestinians. And I know how you are devoted to this mission. Mm-hmm. And I believe that our future is to understand that we are not doomed to live together. Our destiny is to live together. Nevertheless, the miss of trust between the two people, make it almost impossible to find a way in order to bring to an end not only a conflict but a real tragedy. We are living together, we are sharing the same land, we have responsibilities, but we have to trust each other in order to understand that we can live together. Unfortunately, for the time being, we are wasting a lot, 120 years. It's not only one side, it's both sides, but the rejection of many of our neighbors, the Palestinians, our cousins, the Palestinians, to the very idea of the existence of the state of Israel really does not help us in the last 100 years since the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But I would like to also emphasize that I'm not so sure. Actually, I'm not sure at all that bringing to an end the conflict, which is a must, will bring us to any kind of solution to what is going on here in the region. We have learned in universities and in the army that the enemy of your enemy is your friend. Unfortunately, not necessarily so. We find ourselves in a position that we are surrounded by more than 5 armies. Every one of them is fighting the other one. No one of them is really feeling a lot of sympathy to the state of Israel. And that goes on, and what is going on here. And now we have new neighbors, and the Russians, and I met President Putin, and he was talking to me saying, you are a very good friend of the Americans. I say, I confess, I admit with a lot of pride. Tell them that we are going to keep every interest that we find as necessary for us in all around the world, especially on the Black Sea. And we got to understanding about, with your knowledge, of course, about the details that we had to understand and to find a way in order to cooperate on a tactic basis in order to make it possible for all of us to be on the same Earth space when you have the SA-300. And because of that, Mr. Secretary, I would like to welcome you once again. You know that we are facing a lot of challenges, and the need to understand that in the Middle East there are no shortcuts. No shortcuts. Every challenge is an opportunity. Nevertheless, some of the challenges should be handled. I would like to thank the former President Obama and President Trump about the understanding of the needs of Israel, and we are looking forward. And we are looking forward, knowing that we have a great friend in the Pentagon and in the administration, and we welcome you from the bottom of our heart. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for making time. I know how busy you are. But it's an honor and a privilege to be here, the first member of the new administration's cabinet to visit Israel. We are committed to Israel's defense. We support Israel's internal security and Israel's external security. Obviously, the week before the Holocaust Remembrance Time, it's important we all remind ourselves, if good people don't band together and work together across all religious and all ethnic lines, then bad people can dominate, and we're not going to allow it. We're going to work very, very closely. My view is that relationships do not stay the same. They either get better or they get weaker. And our commitment is to make these relationships stronger. The military-to-military relationship, Mr. President, has always been good. But I will just tell you that we intend to make it the strongest ever and work with all our friends in the region and elsewhere in terms of security. We have two fundamental threats here. One is from terrorism, the other is from Iran. And we cannot allow those threats to break apart the human connections between those of us who are committed to peace and prosperity and tolerance for each other. And we have seen new challenges arise, but as you point out, there are new opportunities, Mr. President, and we will work together with you and other like-minded nations. We're not alone in how we look at terrorists. We're not alone how we look at Iran's problems. So it's time for us to all work together. But certainly the enduring relationship with Israel will be stronger every day. But thank you again for the very warm welcome, Mr. President.
God bless you. God bless America. God bless President Trump.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. President, thank you. Very kind of you.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. As I was telling the Prime Minister and the Speaker today, I consider you among one of the fewer than a handful of men in the world who possess not just great experience, but genuine wisdom. And you know, and I say to your friends and to the press here, that I've always sought it. I've sought it over the past 40 years, and I mean that sincerely. Mr. Sullivan and I, my National Security Advisor, on the way back from the Sharon Ranch, we're talking about, he raised the point that you may be the most eloquent and articulate man he's ever heard. And I pointed out that not only are you eloquent and articulate, but you possess great wisdom. President Obama wanted me to be here today, not merely, but primarily to pay our respects to a great war hero, but a man whose life seemed to, from my perspective at least, mirror the changes that occurred in Israel since its inception as a nation state. At the very outset, the overwhelming necessity was literally to keep from being pushed into the sea by hostile neighbors that were more powerful and had larger armies and more weapons. And he led the fight and changed the circumstance, where Israel is no longer in physical jeopardy as a consequence of being overwhelmed. Israel is a significant power in its own right. But as that changed, it seemed to me as though former Prime Minister Sharon not changed, but changed his focus. When I said today that one of the last utterances he made, major statements, was he wanted to work on peace, God only knows what would have happened had the last 8 years been one where he was still in that vineyard working for peace. I think it reflects a change in the region, the need to, the understanding that Israel's ultimate security rests in a genuine accommodation with the Palestinians that is born out of secure borders, but peaceful. You know, I was saying earlier, Mr. President, that the Arab Spring is an incredible historical phenomenon. But I think our grandchildren and great-grandchildren are going to look back on it and say, why did they think they could manage it? It has a life of its own, and we can only hope to be wise enough to help steer it in the right direction. But the one place where there's a possibility for an island of stability, quite frankly, is what you said, and that is between the Palestinian people and the Israeli people, in two secure states, respecting one another's sovereignty and security. And the President believes, and I believe, this is one of those opportunities, one of those moments in history where it has to be seized. As you know, my friend, and he is my close friend for a long time, John Kerry, is passionate about creating and trying to help accommodate that outcome. And there are difficult decisions. They're going to be very difficult decisions. And I, like you, believe that the Prime Minister is up to it. It's not easy. None of this is easy. And let me say one last thing, Mr. President. I said to you privately, we're waiting for the actual burial, that it is truly remarkable that, from my perspective, God blessed this great country at its inception with such a group of exceptional men and women, exceptional leaders. It seems as though if you look at your generation of leaders, from Ben-Gurion to many who I've gotten to know, I knew from Golda Meir to Rabin to all of the men and women who were, as they say, to steal a phrase from a book written in the United States, present at the creation. Yes, exactly right. And it was, and so part of it was to even though all of you had different political points of view, you were all absolutely convicted about the necessity for there to be a nation-state of Israel as the ultimate security for Jews around the world. I still believe that to be the case. And I think, and I'm convinced, that all your life's work has been leading to this moment. And God willing, it'll be able to be seized. God willing, the Abu Mazen will be up to the task, because he's got to make some very difficult decisions. So I'm looking forward to having a chance when we can sit alone to plumb the depths of your knowledge about how you see things actually unfolding in a detailed basis. But let me conclude by saying, and I've said this many, many times, it's an honor to be with you, and you're one of those men who every time I meet with, I learn something, and I appreciate that, and I'm anxious for us to be able to have a discussion.
Thank you so much.